What happens when one woman dares to ask the question that makes power squirm? On May 16th, 2024, inside the marble chambers of Capitol Hill, what began as a dry committee hearing on Merrick Garland spiraled into something electric. The moment came fast. An offhand insult from Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, and suddenly, all the air shifted. "I think your fake eyelashes are messing up what you're reading," she said. But hair target Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She raised a mirror, and with one measured response, she exposed the double standard that's lived too long in silence. This wasn't about makeup. It wasn't even about Garland. It was about power, who's allowed to wield it, and who's punished for questioning it. It was about how black women are expected to smile through insult, stay composed through attack, and still be called too much when they finally push back. And this time, the pushback made the room stop. Stay with us, because this isn't just another headline. It's the voice our grandmothers were never allowed to raise. Subscribe and stay, because silence no longer protects us. It was supposed to be just another dry, forgettable day in the halls of the United States Congress on May 16th, 2024. The House Oversight Committee gathered for what looked like a routine hearing focused on whether Attorney General Merrick Garland should be held in contempt for not handing over audio recordings of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur. The subject matter: dry, procedural, legalistic. The kind of hearing where eyes glaze over and staffers sneak glances at their phones. But what unfolded that day wasn't about tapes. It wasn't even about Garland. It was about power, who holds it, who challenges it, and who gets punished for doing so. In one corner sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, first-term Democrat from Texas, civil rights attorney, and one of the sharpest voices rising through the ranks. In the other sat Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, hard-right firebrand from Georgia, infamous for her viral outbursts and weaponized provocation. The tension wasn't spoken, but it was there, buzzing just beneath the surface. Greene had veered off script, as she often does. Instead of focusing on Garland, she brought up Judge Juan Merchan's daughter, suggesting she was involved with Democrats. It was a classic Greene tactic: inject controversy, drag in the irrelevant, provoke without proof. That's when Crockett leaned in, not out of anger, but out of refusal. "Please tell me what that has to do with Merrick Garland," she asked, her voice calm but firm, her tone the kind that cuts through noise with scalpel precision. Greene smiled, leaned back slightly, and fired her reply with icy nonchalance. "I think your fake eyelashes are messing up what you're reading." Gasps didn't echo, but you could feel the temperature shift. The insult wasn't just petty. It was deliberate, a shot aimed straight at Crockett's appearance, designed to belittle and provoke. But more than that, it exposed the very double standard that women, especially black women, face in professional spaces every day. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez reacted first. "That is absolutely unacceptable," she declared. "How dare you attack the physical appearance of another person?" Her voice didn't just carry, it commanded. And yet, Committee Chairman James Comer did nothing. No gavel, no motion to strike, no call for order. He let it sit, let it rot, let the insult stand unchallenged. So Crockett did what women like her have done for generations. She stayed composed, calculated, and deadly clear. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad, built, butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities. Correct. There was no screaming, no name calling, no chaos. Just a question pointed, legal, devastating. The room froze. That question didn't just challenge Greene, it challenged the institution itself. Because if Greene's insult didn't break the rules, then neither did Crockett's hypothetical. Suddenly, The rules always touted as sacred were exposed for what they often are, selectively enforced. Some people shifted in their seats. Others stayed very still. The silence that followed wasn't out of respect. It was out of recognition. Recognition that something had shifted. Recognition that Crockett didn't just defend herself, she defended the right of black women to exist in power without being reduced to appearance, without having to swallow their pride just to keep peace in the room. It wasn't about Garland anymore. It wasn't even about Greene. It was about who gets to speak freely and who has to choose every word like it's a landmine. And in that moment, Jasmine Crockett didn't explode. She didn't retreat. She did what black women in America have always done when the world tries to shrink them. She stood tall and made the room and the nation listen. To understand what happened in that committee room, you have to understand the women who sat at its center. 2 members of Congress, 2 Americans, 2 worlds. Jasmine Crockett didn't come from privilege. She was born in Saint Sante, Louis, Missouri, a city where a black girl has to learn early how to raise her voice loud enough to matter. Her mother was a public school teacher. Her father, a man of military discipline. From the beginning, she knew what structure felt like, but she also knew what struggle looked like. She wasn't raised with silver spoons or marble floors. She was raised with grit. Crockett studied hard, made her way to the University of Houston Law Center, and took on the role of public defender in Texas. She didn't choose cases that made headlines. She chose the ones that mattered. Eviction cases, wrongful arrests, police misconduct. She stood between power and the people it tried to crush. Not for applause, for justice. By the time she entered the Texas State House, she was no stranger to confrontation. She came to Congress in 2022, not to sit silently, but to speak loudly, not with volume, but with purpose. Her words were sharp, her stance unshakable, and she knew too well that her presence in those halls wasn't just for her, it was for the girls watching, wondering if there was space for them in the rooms where decisions get made. On the other side of that long committee table sat Marjorie Taylor Greene, a woman shaped by a very different path, raised in Milledgeville, Georgia. Greene inherited her father's construction business and ran it before diving into politics. Unlike Crockett, Greene didn't walk the courtroom halls defending the voiceless. She walked into Washington with a bullhorn, building her career by saying the things others whispered and tweeting the things most politicians only hint at. Her style wasn't about facts or decorum. It was about volume. She called Democrats pedophiles, mocked survivors, pushed conspiracy theories, and wore her provocations like badges of honor. Where Crockett used logic, Greene used spectacle. And where Crockett was forged by law, Greene thrived in outrage. Yet somehow, these 2 women, so different in tone, background, purpose, found themselves seated just feet apart. And over time, that distance shrunk. In glances, in remarks, in microaggressions turned macro. Before the lash comment, there had been other clashes, subtle ones, a raised eyebrow here, a passive-aggressive dig there. But what happened on May 16th was not spontaneous. It was a boiling point. It was inevitable because Jasmine Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene are not just individuals, they are symbols. Crockett stands for the future of black leadership. Unapologetic, principled, informed. Greene stands for the MAGA machine, provocative, combative, and fiercely performative. Their clash wasn't about Garland. It was about the America that defends dignity versus the America that rewards disrespect. It was about who is expected to play nice and who is permitted to throw stones. And when they finally collided, it wasn't because they were angry women. It was because only one of them knew how much was at stake. Inside the marble walls of Congress, there are rules, pages and pages of them. They govern everything from how to address one another to how to yield time, strike remarks, and maintain decorum. On paper, they're neutral. In practice, they are not. And on May 16th, those rules were tested and exposed. When Marjorie Taylor Greene made her remark about fake eyelashes, she wasn't just insulting Congresswoman Crockett. She was testing the boundaries of the system. She knew what she was doing. She knew it would provoke, and she also knew, based on history, that the system would likely protect her. She was right. Chairman James Comer, the man responsible for keeping the hearing in order, did not flinch. He didn't gavel. He didn't object. He didn't even acknowledge the gravity of what had been said. He let it stand, as if it were just another day in Washington. But when Crockett responded not with an insult, but with a hypothetical, the atmosphere changed. Her line about bleach blonde, bad built, butch body wasn't a personal attack. It was a mirror, a legal, rhetorical mirror. And suddenly, people got nervous, because Crockett's words forced the room to look at itself, at its double standards, at its cowardice, at the ease with which it tolerates white aggression, and the speed with which it polices black response. If you believe this is what Black America needed all along, say truth in the comments below. The discomfort wasn't in what she said. It was in what it revealed. Here was a professional black woman, a sitting member of Congress, being mocked for her appearance during a formal hearing, and the institution designed to protect order said nothing. But the moment she flipped the script, the whispers began. Was that appropriate? Did she go too far? Shouldn't she have kept her cool? Respectability politics reared its head, that old ghost that haunts every room a black woman enters. Be calm, be nice, be reasonable. Let them insult you, but don't you dare raise your voice. Let them laugh at your hair, your name, to your tone. But don't you respond with the same fire, because if you do, you're not a leader. You're angry. That's the weight Crockett carried into that room, the constant pressure to choose her words carefully, while others throw verbal punches without fear of consequence. And she did choose them carefully. She didn't lash out. She didn't raise her voice. She simply asked the question, one that made the entire hearing stop in its tracks. It was surgical. It was powerful. It was necessary. The irony. Crockett followed the rules more closely than anyone in that room. She posed her question to clarify a ruling, not to retaliate. She stayed within the bounds of decorum, even as those very bounds were used to excuse Greene's mockery. But still, the backlash came not against Greene, who started it, but against Crockett, who answered. On social media, the clips went viral. Fake eyelashes trended. Think pieces flooded in. Crockett was both praised and condemned. Some called her a hero. Others said she stooped to Greene's level, but those who watched closely saw something else. They saw a woman tired of being polite in the face of provocation. They saw a professional refusing to shrink to keep the peace. They saw the truth of how rules are not always applied but selectively enforced, because the rules are not broken. They're bent. And they bend in favor of those. The system was built to protect. What Jasmine Crockett did that day wasn't break the rules. She revealed them while the committee pressed on with its vote. Whether to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt, the hearing itself had already shifted into something else entirely. Outside the walls of Capitol Hill, the real verdict was being written in headlines, hashtags, group chats, and breakfast tables. The moment Jasmine Crockett calmly asked her now famous question, she wasn't just speaking into a microphone, she was speaking into a mirror. And the country looked back. By the time the committee recessed, the phrase fake eyelashes had trended across platforms, but it wasn't the insult that captivated the public. It was the restraint, the clarity, the balance between hurt and poise that only someone used to being disrespected could deliver with that much grace. Clips of the exchange spread like wildfire. Progressive shows praised Crockett's composure. Civil rights advocates applauded her courage. And across Black America, The feeling was visceral. Finally, someone said what needed to be said in public, in power, and without apology. Meanwhile, conservative commentators tried to pivot. Some called Greene's comment a harmless joke. Others accused Crockett of escalating, but the country wasn't fooled. Even those unfamiliar with congressional hearings could see the dynamic play out. One woman mocking, the other mirroring, and when the mirror revealed a double standard, some people didn't like what they saw. In cities like Detroit, Philadelphia, and Oakland, barbershops and beauty salons became forums. Crockett's name was spoken with pride, like she had just walked off the front lines of a fight every working black woman knows too well. In a small-town church in Mississippi, the pastor opened his sermon with the question, "What does dignity look like when someone tries to take it from you?" And across social media, voix poured out. "She spoke for my daughter. She did what I couldn't do at my job last week." That's how you check them with facts and fire. Congresswoman Jasmine. Latest news wasn't just about the hearing anymore. It had become a story about survival in plain sight, about how power dresses itself up in procedure, but still knows how to humiliate when it wants to, and about how sometimes refusing to stay silent is the most radical thing you can do, even within Congress. The impact rippled. Staffers, many of whom go unnoticed behind the scenes, told reporters that Crockett's words echoed in their private conversations. One aide, speaking anonymously, said, "She said what a lot of us feel every meeting, every time we're talked over, or smiled at, like we're decoration instead of decision makers." Legal scholars weighed in. Professors at Howard, Spelman, and Georgetown used the moment as a case study, not in law, but in leadership, race, and gender. And on college campuses from Texas to New York, students organized watch parties, not for entertainment, but for education. They replayed the footage, paused it, and dissected every line, not to criticize, but to understand how respectability politics still tries to silence women who speak too clearly, too boldly, too black. Meanwhile, Crockett didn't seek the spotlight. She didn't bask in it. She returned to her office, dropped her folders, and kept working. When asked by reporters for comment, she kept it focused. This wasn't about me and her. This was about what black women deal with every day. But now, the cameras caught it. She could have dragged Greene. She didn't. She could have milked the moment. She didn't. She let the silence speak. The same silence she's had to carry through courtrooms, boardrooms, and now committee rooms. Congresswoman Jasmine. Latest news had become more than a headline. It was a reminder that even in 2024, some rooms still need shaking, and that when one woman dares to ask the right question, it can make the entire country sit up and listen. What happened between Jasmine Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene was more than a spat, more than a viral clip. It was a cultural rupture, the kind that doesn't seal quickly, because for millions of Americans, this moment didn't just resemble politics. It resembled life. It resembled the meeting where your ideas were overlooked until someone else said them louder. The classroom where your raised hand was ignored. The interview where your natural hair was deemed unprofessional. The subtle digs that aren't written in emails, but written on faces. The assumption that your anger is aggression, that your voice is too sharp, that your tone is a little much. In that room, Crockett didn't just respond for herself. She became a stand-in for every woman, particularly every black woman who's ever been told to smile while being disrespected. She didn't yell. She didn't storm out. She didn't match insult for insult. She asked a question, and in doing so, she flipped the power dynamic. She made the room look at its own hypocrisy. She forced the system to confront the mirror. It usually avoids. That's why the response was so loud. Because the silence had been so long, radio hosts couldn't stop discussing it. Callers across the country echoed the same theme. I've been there. In Fresno, a high school debate team used the transcript as a mock hearing not to argue about Garland, but to explore equity and power in language. One student said, "I didn't know Congress talked like that. I thought they were supposed to be better than us." But it wasn't cynicism. It was clarity. Because that hearing wasn't just a political moment, it was a teachable one, a revealing one, a mirror of the uneven expectations placed on people based on how they show up in the world. And most of all, it was a turning point. For once, a black woman in power didn't swallow her words. She didn't protect the room's comfort. She didn't let decorum be an excuse for disrespect. She made the room uncomfortable. And that was the point. United States Congress. Latest news usually fades after a news cycle. But this moment lingers. Not because of who shouted, but because of who didn't flinch. Even after the camera stopped rolling, the story kept moving. Families talked about it over dinner. Churches used it as a sermon anchor. Teachers used it as curriculum. Retired veterans nodded knowingly. Young girls posted it with a caption, "One day, that'll be me." In a world full of noise, Crockett's composure was the signal because she didn't try to win a fight. She showed what it takes to stay standing in one. She showed how to hold power with elegance and edge. And in doing so, she reminded us of the question we should all be asking. When the rules are weaponized and silence is rewarded, who will dare to speak? What Jasmine Crockett did on that committee floor wasn't loud, but it was thunder. She didn't demand attention. She earned it. She didn't throw chairs. She moved minds. And in that moment, she reminded the world of a truth, long known but rarely witnessed on camera. Dignity is not silence. Decorum is not submission. And justice does not require permission to speak. This wasn't just a clash between two women. It was a reckoning. A long overdue reminder that power must be held accountable, especially when it hides behind smirks and sarcasm. Crockett didn't ask for applause. She didn't lean into victimhood. She stood up, steady and sharp, and asked a question that exposed everything. And that's what? Millions felt deep in their chest. The resonance of truth, calmly spoken, in a room that wasn't ready for it. Congresswoman Jasmine. Latest news wasn't about Garland. It was about gays. It was about the way black women are watched, judged, and held to impossible standards, and what happens when they choose not to shrink. And in choosing not to shrink, Crockett expanded the space for every woman who has been told she's too much, for every girl told to tone it down, for every elder who sat in silence so the next could speak. The next time someone says, "It's not that serious," to remember this. It always has been. So if this story stirred something in your spirit, if it reminded you of a room you sat in, of a moment you didn't speak, but wished you had, then let's not let it fade. Speak black truth. And if this story moves something in your chest, don't scroll past. Like, share, stand, subscribe. Because they silenced our voices long enough. Let's raise them louder than ever. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story, the kind they still don't want you to hear. Congresswoman Jasmine, latest news. United States Congress. Latest news.